Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column Live. It's 12 o'clock on the 7th of September. Myself, Lou Collins and Brian Gerrish are here in Plymouth as always.
Good morning.
Morning. Beautiful sunny day out there today.
It is, particularly fine weather in Plymouth. If anybody'd like a local forecast, simply have a look out the window. That's what the UK Column Live team do.
That's what we do, and we've also noticed that there are plenty of chemtrails out this morning, circling, crisscrossing all over the place. So it was a positive morning until I saw them. Are you going to start with the news this morning?
Well, we've decided to kick off with an article from the Police Oracle, which is talking about Surrey Police having formally withdrawn from a business partnering programme with West Midlands Police to find a private company for outsourcing support functions. And what they're reporting is that the force officially withdrew on September the 6th, and this was in wake of the G4S Olympics fiasco, and the security company was amongst those in the running for outsourced services. It's a very interesting statement here from the Oracle, because it goes on to say that Surrey Police claimed it was putting the plans on ice because it feared police and the Crime Commissioner candidates running on an anti-privatisation platform would oppose them once in office. So there's a very interesting mixed message being put out. On one hand, the police are withdrawing from a privatisation plan, seemingly on the back of G4S's fiasco with Olympic security. But then there's a little sting in the tail, because they're only really doing it because they're worried that the new police and crime commissioners that the government's trying to force through would oppose them when they come into office. What's significant is that Surrey Police will still have to pay £160,000, its share of the $800,000 the programme's cost so far. But not to worry, because some of that is shared between the Home Office and the two police forces. So the minimum that this article says, though, is that the G4 fiasco has now started to get some people in the police actually thinking about what is going on and what the relative benefits are. But of course we can see from what's been reported here that there's a two-tier structure. There's the practicality of bringing in private companies on the ground, and then in the background we've got the upper level politics, which is the government manipulating police forces. And of course we reported yesterday that north of the border the drive is to create one consolidated Scottish police force. Massive power, huge force, second after the Met. And of course, the moment that power is brought into the hands of private companies like Serco or G4S, for example, all public accountability for the people providing these services has disappeared, because the general public can't get at them.
I'd just like to make a comment on G4S. They're patrolling. They're in like job centres. I was contacted the other week to say that they're actually being in charge of coming around to read, I think it's either your gas or your electric meters. So I mean, they're getting into every part of our lives, these private firms. Well,
it's been very noticeable in South Devon, where we're reporting from, that G4S vans are on the rise. So here we have a company which has demonstrated utter incompetence in providing high-level security services, but meanwhile they're burrowing into, as Louise has just said, aspects of our daily life. And of course this mirrors the progress of this vast global company, Serco, where we now see it with a finger in the pie with everything from servicing of nuclear weapons to cleaning up local hospitals. So the real lie, which is coming out of Westminster, it's coming out of the Tory party, but of course the other parties as well, is that the privatisation is to help the general public. In fact, what it is doing is bringing the general public within the yoke of corporate power. So I think we need to keep reporting on this. For people out there, please keep digging. And that's a good little prompt, actually, to say thank you very much to all the people who've been emailing in to us. We are pleased that you like what we're doing, and we're very grateful for all of the information that comes through.
And it's just not in the UK, is it?
No, it's coming from overseas.
All over Europe, and everywhere, so that's really good.
We can't respond to all of that information because there's too much, so don't think we don't appreciate it. Keep sending the information to us and we'll do our best to get it out and broadcast. So keep your eye on the police is really the key part of the first story. If you know police or you've got police in your family, do talk to them, do get them thinking about what's actually happening and how they're going to lose their jobs if these private companies are allowed to get the upper hand.
Absolutely. Staying with yourself, I think.
Well, I've got to come on to this subject. It's young Harry, and I can suspect that the few people out there in the military are feeling quite supportive of Harry because he's one of the royal family that has actually got in amongst it, and he's technically serving his country at the moment. But I think the comment we'd just like to make is that if Harry was a normal officer in the army, his behaviour over recent weeks would have certainly brought him into a court-martial. But here we have Harry gently being packaged off to Afghanistan in his Apache helicopter, where he's going to do a tour of duty. I'm afraid that I think that there's a cynical answer to what's going on here, and that is that he's been moved out of the spotlight so that Prince Charles's objective of a media clampdown on this young man's behaviour, this is going to be get him out of the limelight, get him over into Afghanistan, ramp up his image as being there on the front line and in danger, and then my prediction will be in a few months he'll be back.
Classed as a hero, probably with...
Classed as a hero, spending huge amounts of public money and acting with no dignity.
And I think there'll be lots of photos of him being a hero, you know, maybe babes in arms or something.
Perhaps I'm about to be proved wrong, but I believe that people that at the moment are supporting Harry in his behaviour are badly mistaken, and I also believe that the huge supposed public response to the media saying how it was an invasion of privacy to report what was going on, I believe that this was itself a media propaganda operation. So I'm sorry if UK Column Live is going to upset a few people on this issue, but for me, with an ex-military background, I think his behaviour was totally unacceptable, and to some extent he needs to pay the price. I don't see that.
And now this
happening.
is just a great PR stunt, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Staying with yourself, I think.
Well, we have to talk about MPs because it's blatantly obvious at the moment that MPs are doing exactly as they please. So if they commit crimes, they're simply moved out for a while as David Law's MPs. When you've done enough time away from the media spotlight, then you're gently brought back in for loyalty. So here's a picture of the new cabinet, obviously congratulating themselves. But what the Telegraph is reporting is that they're still spending as much as always on their personal expenses. Well, why shouldn't they? Because none of them have really been brought to book for fiddling their expenses in the first place. And I think until we get to the stage where more MPs are locked up for their crimes, they're going to carry on committing them. But it is good to see that other people are reporting on what's happening. We've taken this little excerpt from politics.co.uk because they provide a very good breakdown of how much money that MPs are spending. And remember that it's not just money, it's viewers' money, it's our money, it's the public's money. And MPs are now close to the 95.4 million they spent in 2008-9. So it's obvious that there's no cutback on blowing public money if you're one of the MPs in Westminster.
No, exactly.
Shocking, really.
It is.
Bees are the hot subject.
Yeah, I've been saying this for a while now, that the bees are in decline. Now, I had it something down to do with maybe what they were spraying in the chemtrails. But the Independent today has picked up that no ban on pesticides that threaten bees. The European and American reports say nerve agents may be in danger. Nerve agents may be a danger, but the UK goes on using them. An internal review of recent research on neonicotinoids neonicotinoids, pesticides that act on insects' central nervous system and are increasingly blamed for problems with the bee colonies. And that the people, where are they from? Well, the government have said there's no need to change British regulation. But what interests me particularly is a quote that's saying, concern is growing around the world that chemicals may affect the ability of bees to pollinate crops, something that would be catastrophic consequence for agriculture. Bee pollination has been valued at 200 million per year in Britain. But then it comes to, introduced by Bayer in the early 1990s, neonicotinoids have been an immense commercial success. Bayer has earned £510 million since they introduced this. So one is, it's all about the money, as always, and I do believe Mike wants to comment on Bayer. Is that correct, Mike?
Well, the first thing I would say is that this link between pesticides and colony collapse syndrome has been well recognised in the beekeeping community in France, for example, and in Europe generally, but particularly in France. In Germany, because Bayer's a German company, there's not much chance of any progress being made there. But certainly in France, there's a lot of protest over Bayer in particular. And I was speaking to somebody. We're hoping to do a significant documentary on this in the not too distant future. I was speaking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and she was alleging that actually the pesticides companies have been placing or encouraging their own employees to get involved in the beekeeping community, and then they've been filtering their way up through the various beekeeping societies in the UK and helping to sort out the PR campaign so that it appears that the beekeeping community do not accept a link between the pesticides and the colony collapse syndrome, and to divert the beekeeping community away from that angle. So we are hoping to do something significant on this issue in the not too distant future.
Brilliant. What the article in The Independent doesn't mention, which would be a concern to me, is must surely these pesticides would eventually be getting into the food chain.
Well, of course, you know, the thing that I immediately picked up on this article is we're talking nerve agents, which have been absolutely part of the chemical weapon armoury, and here we're using this type of chemical technology. What research has been done on the safety of this? And we clearly do have a problem with bees. The significance, of course, simply put, is if we have a problem with bees, we have a problem with pollination, and we have a problem with growing foodstuffs. And here is this company pumping this stuff out. Where's the investigation? I think this is unbelievably dangerous.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Well, we move on. You've promised to be careful on this subject, but the next topic we've got today is Mr. Blair and war crimes.
Yes, it's a really good article actually in the Camden New Journal. I found it. A human rights lawyer called Sir Geoffrey Bindman believes a war crimes prosecution against Tony Blair could stand up in court. He's a veteran QC, founder of the King's Cross-based human rights law firm Bindmans, and he was on a BBC Radio 4 interview on Sunday, and he said, "I think a trial should or could be based on the fact a crime of aggression has been committed. The crime was starting the war. It is now almost certain the war was illegal because it breached the UN Charter and provisions, which say all members of the UN must refrain from the use of force against territorial integrity or independence of any state. The only exceptions to that are self-defense or a Security Council decision." He also added, "There is a strong moral case. Simply by looking at the effect of the invasion, over 100,000 were killed. Morally, it was an outrage. In law, the man in charge is responsible. The man at the top carries the can," which we have been saying for quite a long time. And apparently, he said the decision to invade Iraq had destabilised the world and was the precursor of the atrocities in the Middle East and Syria. And a spokesman for Mr. Blair said the Archbishop's comments were part of a healthy democracy. So, that previous comment is after Desmond Tutu came out and said he wouldn't share the stage with Tony Blair because he believed he was a war criminal. And now we have a human rights lawyer
I think what we can see is that this thing is gathering momentum, and what an effect it would have on the corruption in the British government, and what a message it would send around the world if we could actually finally see a senior British politician brought to justice for war crimes.
I think we should get behind this gentleman.
Well, I think this man needs a lot of support, and can we
Definitely.
encourage people to have a look at the Camden New Journal, because it's only by newspapers and periodicals actually having the courage to print this type of story, that we can keep the truth coming out. So a well done to Camden New Journal.
Definitely.
Okay, yeah. Well, we're really sticking at the state of politics today. We know that there's a lot more going on in Britain than just a battle between three very tired and corrupt parties. And of course, the latest thing to hit the press at the moment has been the fact that the Prime Minister is going to give knighthoods to some people that have already been sacked. So the message is becoming more and more clear, I think, that basically if you're dishonest, there's a place for you in Westminster. If you're really dishonest, you can be moved up into the House of Lords. If you're dishonest with your expenses, but you keep quiet for a while, you can be promoted back into Cabinet. And then if you've really done nothing, we're going to give you a knighthood. And I just think that the system is now really becoming so transparent that what we have is an old boys club which is simply rewarding people. I thought it would be appropriate to at least show the faces of some of the people being mentioned. We've got South East Cambridgeshire MP Jim Pace. He's been involved with farming. Quite what he's done in farming, I'm not sure.
I think it's the culling and murdering of badgers.
Well, badgers is certainly, and he's been doing something with the milk industry. But of course, as we know from the farming community, the farmers consider that British farming has been devastated, and yet here is a man who's now been in post for a while. He's going to be knighted. We've got Gerald Howarth MP, and of course we always find connections into the law and legal side. So we've got Harborough MP Edward Garnier, former Solicitor General. So quite what these men are being rewarded for, apart from being chums of David Cameron, we don't know. If anybody would like to tell us why they believe they deserve their knighthoods, we'll be very grateful.
Yeah.
The Sun, well, it's credit where it's due. And this is quite an interesting article from The Sun, which is actually talking about press freedom. And we could be cynical, we could say that there's a deeper political agenda behind this article by Mick Hume, the political commentator. But what he's saying is that he's produced a new book, but the article is talking about that and what's happening. Freedom of the press is a fundamental pillar of a democratic country such as ours. Well, if it were democratic, that would be true, but we get the point. And they go on to say, yet never before has the British press been under such intense scrutiny. There's a powerful myth that the British press is too free and wild. The truth is the press is not nearly free enough. And this is a very, very interesting comment here. And things are set to get worse if the celebrity crusaders egging on the police and Lord Justice Leveson have their way. And a final comment here, Sue Ackers, the top cop in charge of investigating phone hacking and other alleged press crimes, says the operation is likely to last another 3 years and cost 40 million. And so far just 8 people have been charged with hacking, but of course once again nobody in the government, no government ministers that have been connected with the rot and the phone hacking. Nobody from Westminster has come near the law.
Fun, that, isn't it?
So a very powerful article from The Sun, and it emphasises later on, some of us have long suspected that the Leveson inquiry is just the state's latest effort to tame the press. And who should decide what is in the public interest? Lord Justice Leveson, Simon Cowell, Piers Morgan. So There's an irony here that the Sun is often the one that's slinging the mud around, but here they are actually starting to get to grips with some serious issues.
Yep, well
and
done.
I wonder whether the press in general and journalists are beginning to work out that when the dictatorship installs itself, of course journalists are going to be off to the camps.
Yeah.
But we can follow this along fairly quickly because the Leveson inquiry, of course, is still going on in the background, and it's emerged in the press, but we decided to go to the source for this, that so far they've spent £3.9 million. The Leveson site did bring out some breakdown of how money's been spent. So, of course, staff costs 1.2 million, and then counsel to the inquiry, which I think is money into the pockets of QCs, 1 million. What we really need is some further breakdown to actually see how much people have been paid, including the David Bell team, so Leveson's panel, because these figures don't actually tell us at the moment. Now, of course, the UK column did focus in on Leveson, and I encourage, obviously, viewers and listeners to have a look at what we've been saying, but I've got in front of me the article that's just popped up on screen.
No, it's from January this year, by the way.
January, yeah, thank you. And the key point is that we've got David Bell, Chairman of the Trustees of Common Purpose, and heavily involved with the Media Standards Trust, itself interlinked with Common Purpose. Well, he did stand down when Lord Leveson gave him the job, but if we look at what Media Standards Trust was doing into the run-up to Leveson, they were clearly lobbying very, very strongly for there to be an investigation, and they were doing everything possible to undermine the Press Complaints Commission. What we've pointed out in our article is that if we start to look into the background of David Bell and the Media Standards Trust, what we find is absolute vested interest. So, for example, some of the organisations involved with the Media Standards Trust include Esme Fairburn, Gatsby, Joseph Rowntree, Aranda, MacArthur, Knight, Nuffield, Pearson, Cohen, Story and Scott. And then the threads go on to Sainsbury, Rothschild, Guardian Media Group. And if you dig deeper still, you'll come into the area of David Halpin's Institute for Government. This is on the behavioural modification. And again, we've got Lord Sainsbury, Sir Roy Anderson, Sir Brian Bender, Jocelyn Burgeon, Sir Andrew Kahn, Lord Curry, Sir Christopher Foster, and the Cabinet Office Behavioural Change Unit itself. But the key point is that it was the Media Standards Trust that then kicked off the Hacked Off campaign, which was the one that really started to push for an investigation. So we have David Bell in the Media Standards Trust. The Media Standards Trust spawns the Hacked Off campaign, which calls for an inquiry. Leveson is set up, and then, hey presto, Mr. Bell becomes the leader of the panel for Leveson. So if the press really want to understand what's coming, we are seeing an absolute stitch-up of free press by very powerful interests. And of course, at the back of them, we've got these change agent trusts. Yeah. So if you haven't read that UK column article, and you would like a copy of the actual newspaper itself, please get in touch with us.
Yeah, better still, subscribe to our website and join in with our chat box, and plenty more things to be coming shortly from us at the UK column. Well,
one thing's for sure, if we lose free media, we lose free press, then the situation in this country is virtually stitched up. We have got to support anybody who is out there to challenge the government and these banking powers.
And here at the column, we get through our everything with just the support of our viewers and the people who've been supporting the paper. So it's to keep us going. It's quite important to subscribe and join in with what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've got some articles. I think, Mike, you're interested in, of course, what's going on in the financial world. So we've got a report from the BBC. I'd like to apologise for that, but we thought we'd have one.
The main point about this was the BBC's attitude to the news from the European Central Bank and the Bank of England that we talked about on yesterday's programme was to highlight the fact that the markets all shut up yesterday afternoon, and they're implying that that everything is sorted out now. The ECB has basically chucked a load of new money into the system, sort of almost quantitative easing style, and therefore that's perfect. We don't need to worry about anything anymore. The world has changed, and we're in a much better place, and the markets have gone up as a result. And really, I just want to highlight that obviously the markets, the people that are trading in the markets, are going to appreciate any form of bailout, any form of bailout which is going to keep the markets afloat. They don't care about the economy, and they don't care about people's lives. They only care about the markets. So yes, anytime there's this kind of bailout move from a central bank or from another agent, from a government, the markets are going to react in this way. But this should not be taken as signs of a solution being put in place. There is no solution in this monetarist bailout and austerity plan. This is only going to result in more suffering for the majority of people. Yeah. And again, yesterday I was contrasting that with and the day before as well with Putin's plan for using investment in the military industrial complex in Russia to sort of relaunch or to help drive the other economy. And the next article that we have here is the fact that China is now pushing another £100 billion into their infrastructure. Again, they're recognizing that their exports are starting to fall as a result of the collapse of the Western economies. Yeah. And so they're putting what money that they have, and they have particularly lots of dollars, into building their internal infrastructure, because this is going to drive and help build their internal economy, and really because China is so reliant on exports for their economy, they're taking the right action to try and build up an internal market for themselves, based on a national infrastructure plan. And I would just say that this so-called national infrastructure plan that we have in the UK, linked to relaxation of the planning laws and greenbelt land being used for housing, our focus in this country is just housing. We don't put anything into manufacturing. We don't put anything into high technology and engineering, which is what our forte was historically. And James Dyson actually was on Radio 4 this morning complaining bitterly that he can't find engineers because we're not training engineers through our universities. And he's saying, within the next few years we're going to have 200,000 less engineering graduates than we need in order just to maintain the manufacturing base that we've got already. If we're not bringing new blood into that manufacturing base, we're really stuffed. So clearly the intention, because the government is refusing to invest in future engineers in this country, the intention is to collapse our manufacturing even further, and export those jobs to other countries. Yeah. So,
What we're really saying here is by watching what other countries are doing to solve their problems, it's obvious. It becomes more obvious that what is actually going on politically in UK is not to build Britain as a nation state, it is actually to collapse the country. And I think this is becoming more and more clear.
Yeah, and the key thing is to contrast the Western Hemisphere economies that are Rothschild financial system controlled, the solutions that they have, which is totally focused on bailing out the Rothschild financial system. Contrast that with the Asian, Russian and Asian nations that are building their infrastructure, they're not really concerned about the Rothschild banking system. They're concerned about their economies, their physical economies, their productive manufacturing capabilities.
Yeah.
And that's a stark contrast, I think.
Right, okay. Well, we've come on the stops for time today. Yeah. I think what we should do is end there. But we'll say once again, thank you very, very much to all the people who are supporting us, who are sending us emails. It's been great to receive them. It's particularly good to receive the ones from overseas. And Lou's got a little announcement for Liberty Tactics.
Yeah, tonight on the show we've got a health guru called Clive de Carl on, and that will be on TNS tonight from 5 o'clock. Clive is incredible about how you can get well, get healthy just by going for a rummage in the forest.
Excellent. Okay.
So that's 5 o'clock tonight on TNS.
All right. Thanks very much for joining us,
yep.
and stay tuned for next Monday.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.